and a little bit about how you sort of became engaged with the idea of digital availability.
Yes. So my current role at Aption is I'm the CMO, and with that, basically, I have all of marketing. So I manage all of marketing, field marketing, what you might call brand marketing, corporate marketing. So the whole gamut of marketing sits under my remit. I first sort of became fascinated with the idea of digital availability when I was consuming, a number of years ago, research that was saying, that obviously in the digital world that we live in, our buyers are, around 70 to 80 to 90% through their buyer journey, depending on the source that you look at, through their buyer journey before they're ready to talk to a salesperson, right? That entire journey that precedes that, 70, 80, 90% is also digital, right? And then round about the same time, I was consuming a book by a gentleman by the name of Byron Sharp, and he's a professor of marketing in somewhere in Australia, and he wrote a book that's called How Brands Grow. But it was really very much directed towards the B2C world. And in that book, he talks about mental availability and physical availability, right? So say, for example, you're pulling up at a garage, you're thirsty, you think of Coca-Cola because it's mentally available in your head. You go into the garage and there's the Coca-Cola physically available to you right there, right? And so, he was talking about, obviously the brand has to be mentally available to people, but then also physically available. And each of these two need to exist to the same level, if you like. So then I started thinking, well, how does that sort of concept work in B2B, right? And that's where I, the concept of digital availability entered my head, right? Because we're not going into, our buyers don't go into a garage, right? But they do their research digitally online. And therefore, we need to make sure that our brand is digitally available to the right level, so that we can, I suppose, communicate effectively from a digital perspective with these buyers. And so I define digital availability as how findable and arresting your brand is across your paid, owned, and earned digital properties, right? And the interesting thing here is that you have to be findable even if somebody's not actively looking, right? And you have to be arresting enough so that when people walk into your shop or on a review site or whatever, you have to be arresting enough in all of those digital properties for people to stay there for a while, then come back again, and ultimately perform an action that's, of value to you, right? So I started really applying that to my previous role, which was at Sage, where I was heading up digital marketing. And I really started to look at, how we increase the digital availability of the Sage brand and what that means, right? Because of course it doesn't only mean that you have to, people have to find your website and have a good experience there. So, they come back again and they stay for, a sufficient length of time, etc. But it's also, are you getting your share of search and, all of those kinds of things, right? Just linking back to the chart that you just had there. So I became completely fascinated by how we could increase Sage's digital availability. And with the help of my entire digital team, we really, I think did a great job in doing that. And that was reflected in the results we saw from our paid media. It was reflected in the conversion of the Sage website, which went from, less than 1% to 6% over the course of, 4 years. So we did all that, and that was great, and obviously learned a lot from that. And so now I'm doing the same at Aption, right? So really doubling down on building that digital availability for the Aption brand, because I think if you have really great digital availability, you will also build the mental availability of the Aption brand, if I link it just back to what I was saying earlier there, right? Because really great digital availability helps build your brand as well as helps fuel your demand, basically.